All right, good morning, everybody in the room. If we could take our seats and we'll go ahead and get started after that short break. Okay, we've already done, do we need to call ourselves back into order? I always want to make sure we're doing it the right way. Okay. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and restart the Pikes Peak area November 13th. We've been in executive session. We've come out of executive session. And so we are on to item 4, public comments and presentations. Do we have any public comments from anyone in the audience today? I'm not going to go ahead and read the whole disclaimer unless everybody really wants me to. Okay. And anybody in the audience that would like to make any public comments? For 3 minutes or less. Do we have anybody online, Jared, for public comment?
Madam Chair, I'll ask anyone who's online who is not a member to please use the raise hand function and let us know if they'd like to provide public comment. In the meantime, we did not receive any advance requests for public comment, and we did not receive any written public comment, and I see no hands raised.
Okay, all right. I'm going to move on from public comment, but I am going to go back and introduce who's in the room again, because I'm sure some people that are joining us, and we do have more elected officials online. So let's go back around the room. We'll start with Andy once again, real quick.
Andy Gunning, PPACG. Mitchell Kine, Mayor of Monument.
John Graham, Mayor, City of Manitou Springs.
Todd Dixon, Mayor of Green Mountain Falls.
Lynette Criverson, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Running. Okay, did Commissioner Vanderworth leave, or is he'll be back in a minute?
He's making a phone call.
Okay, so he's in the meeting. Okay, Yolanda.
Yolanda Avila, City Council, Colorado Springs.
Eric Stone, Teller County Commissioner.
Kelly Case, Mayor, City of Woodland Park.
Okay, and online for elected officials, I have Commissioner Williams. I have
Good
Annie.
morning.
Good morning. I have Andy Durham.
Good morning, everybody. Annie Durham, Mayor of Cripple Creek.
Okay, I have Steve King.
Good morning, Steve King, Mayor Pro Tem Monument.
And Laura Cronick. And Will Shaw.
Mayor Pro Tem of Rama.
Okay, Monument, you are well represented today. All righty, and
Warning up there.
and we also have online Colonel Warner from USAFA. Okay, any elected officials that I missed online? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Colonel Warner.
I was just saying good morning.
All right, good morning. Okay. All righty, and I do see Commissioner Parsons also online.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, alrighty, that takes us on to consent items. Item 5, these items will be acted upon as a whole unless they are called up for discussion by a board member or a citizen wishing to address the board. We have items A, B, C, D, and E. May I have a motion for the consent agenda?
Mayor Dixon, I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
John Graham, all second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, consent passes. That takes us on to item 6, action items. First item A, active transportation plan adoption. Mr. O'Brien that's not you.
Jason is coming up before he starts doing his thing. Just wanted to go back and do one real brief introduction, if I could, with new staff member. Lisa Gagnon has joined us. She's our new transit planner. Come on up, Lisa. You don't have to say anything, but just say hi. Joined us, came here from Massachusetts. Yes, kind of filling the spot of Laura Cruz, our previous mobility coordinator, kind of reworked the position a little bit. So you're now a transit planner, focusing on our transit needs across the region and the transit plan. So yeah, feel free to welcome Lisa when you see her, and she'll be out about in the community, and just really super happy to have her on board. So, thank you. Sure.
Nice to meet everyone.
Welcome, Lisa. All righty. I think you'll like our winner better. Not based on last week, though. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Andy. Okay, do you want, if Jason's not here, how about we skip and go on the next one? Does that work? And then we'll go back. Okay, Mr. Barker. Oh, he's here? Okay, all right. Morning, Jason.
Good morning. I apologize, I'm a little late. I've never been up so fast. Just share my presentation real quick here. I'm going to talk with you about the active transportation plan this morning. We've been working on it for about a year, started in fall of 2023 with hiring the Olson Engineering firm to lead the plan. Got a lot of experience in active transportation. They did a really good job. And while I get this going, I'll just talk a little bit. They did an excellent job, and the previous plan was from 2015. So active transportation in the region has changed a lot since then. So it's a good time for a plan update. And typically, regions will update active transportation plans, usually in step with their LRTPs, so usually every 4 or 5 years. So we sort of skipped one, but I think that's okay. Just gives us sort of a target-rich situation for this plan. Almost there, folks.
So, Chris, Anna Parsons said that the chat is disabled. In case she wanted to raise her hand or. Are you on the line? Sorry, the chat's disabled for people online.
Okay, I'm sure Jerry will take care of that. Thank you.
Do we want it enabled? We've typically kept the chat off.
I think she said she couldn't raise her hand.
She should be able to do that.
Okay,
It's fine.
know.
I'm good
I'm
right now.
just the messenger.
thank you. No, you're fine. Okay. All right, go ahead, Jason.
All right, and if I can be allowed to share real quick, I'll get this short PowerPoint up. Okay. All right. Looks like we've already gone through the first slide here. A little bit about where the active transportation plan fits as a regional plan, because we know all of our member governments have their own active transportation plans for walking and biking, so forth. So why this is important, where it fits, what it does and doesn't do, doesn't replace or supersede any local. It doesn't require our local member governments to do anything, no strings attached, and it doesn't set any constraints on what our local governments can do. So no worries there. What it does really is gather all of the existing and proposed projects together, really just works with existing projects and projects proposed by member governments, and just identifies opportunities, gaps, potential enhancements, things like that, just sort of steps back for the regional view. Another important job is that we think this will be very useful for local jurisdictions with outside funding pursuits. So PPACG does get requests fairly regularly from member governments to include a particular project in a regionally approved plan to show regional support for grant purposes. And the plan also contains a lot of the kind of information that's helpful for grant applications, purpose and need type information, charts, graphs, statements reflecting regional priority, things like that, and data. So we hope it'll be helpful for that.
Jason, just wanted to let you know that you're just sharing the PowerPoint, I guess itself, not the individual slides right now. So we're still seeing the first slide.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I might need a little bit of technical troubleshooting here.
It's ridiculous hard to try to do this and talk and everything at the same time.
Sure.
Yes. Jason, you can keep talking while he's fiddling with that if you want.
Thank you. Yeah. So active transportation can be a little bit, thank you, Jared, can be a little bit contentious. There's a lot of strong feelings about it. So one thing we really wanted to touch on strongly was sort of the values and visions behind doing this plan. How do we do it in a way that's consistent with the people, with the way people in this region feel, what they want and what they desire? So why it really is a Pikes Peak region plan. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about the values and vision behind this. First of all, why do a regional active transportation plan? And the reason is that there are some aspects of active transportation that really do succeed or fail on a regional level. It's a heck of a thing to be using a great multi-use trail that's 8 or 10 feet wide. Looks like it's going well, and then it suddenly ends, crossing a jurisdictional boundary. So things like that can happen. And one of the reasons that some of these facilities are attractors is that you can go a little bit longer distance on them. If you're on a great off-street trail like the Santa Fe Trail, you can cross jurisdictional boundaries. You can get out, get some fresh air. You recreate. You can travel a good distance, and that's the reason that a lot of folks seek these trails out. So without some kind of a regional consistency and coordinated planning, the aspects of these that live or die on a regional level really won't work out. This is a big one. We really wanted to have a consensus plan. So just understanding that active transportation can be a little bit contentious. We didn't want a plan where there's 5 people at the table and the 3 outvote the 2 and, we win this time. We wanted to focus on areas where there seemed to be broad agreement. And we're fortunate enough to have found some of those areas, at least according to our public process and our stakeholder process with our member governments and others. So just picking on street facilities a little bit, and the plan does talk about them and doesn't do anything to discourage them, but we just couldn't get to consensus when we were talking about them. We couldn't get to the broad level agreement that we were looking for. I'm being attacked by notifications. We couldn't get to the broad agreement that we're looking for, but lucky enough, there are some things where everybody seems to agree or at least not have a problem with our off-street trails. Generally, from what we heard in our public involvement and our stakeholder process, everybody seems to either love off-street trails or at worst, they don't object to them. So that was sort of the spectrum of sentiment about those. And that's not necessarily true of other types of active transportation facilities. So, not having $1 million to do the perfect plan, we just wanted to focus on those areas where there seems to be broad agreement and good opportunities for progress. The stakeholder process really was the central piece of this plan. There's a lot of things you can focus on with active transportation plan. You can focus on sort of the academic national expert panel, sort of what everybody should be doing type of thing. You can focus on doing the biggest public process possible, trying to hear from everybody. And we did some of those things, but the stakeholder process really was the core. And those were the conversations, interviews with our member government staff, which we did a lot of, with other organizations, with school districts, where information was sort of already organized, where there were existing plans. We really wanted to work from that as the heart of the plan. We wanted to take an approach that's common sense, better over bigger. There's a lot of big, huge, expensive things you can do, but there are also a lot of opportunities to just make things make more sense. Fill in gaps. You can have 5 miles of trail over here, 4 miles over here, and you can have a silly little 200-meter gap in the middle that makes the whole thing useless because nobody can get anywhere. So you can fix things like that. You can fix things like consistency problems where a regional trail that's got a good cross section turns into a single track, and now you can't use the same type of vehicle to continue along that trail. So you can connect better destinations. You can make sure trails get somewhere. So you can just focus on common sense and just making it better. So that's kind of the approach that we took. Consistency with flexibility is a big one. Sort of already touched on this. If you're traveling across the region, crossing jurisdictional boundaries and different types of areas, you want at least some type of consistency so that you can have the same experience, so that you can see that you're on the same trail, that you're in the same system, and just to identify it as a regional trail. But then there's also instances, I'll use the example of traveling from an urban to a rural area where you're going to have a transition. There's not going to be the exact same type of surface or cross section moving from urban to rural. So consistency with some flexibility is what we're looking for. And then finally, just planning for the general public, or what we call the median user. just to use examples, if there are folks out there who are training 150 miles a week on their bicycles for a race across the Swiss Alps, we hope this plan helps them, but they're not our target customer, right? If there's somebody sitting at home and says they're never ever going to use this, we hope that it becomes so great with this plan that they decide to get off the couch and go for a ride or a run, but that's not really our target customer. So our target customer for the plan really is the general public, the average transportation system user who has some interest and desire to use active transportation. Maybe we can make things a little bit better for them. So that's the sort of the values driving this whole thing. And that will be the longest slide. So I just want to make those things clear. Very quick rundown of our stakeholder and public process. We did do a lot of review of existing plans. Nobody trying to reinvent the wheel. Lots of interviews. We did talk with all of our member governments, their staff, in many cases on multiple occasions as their schedules permitted, community organizations, schools and colleges, including our major school districts, because they sort of know what their issues are. We did 2 rounds of public involvement, 2 rounds of surveys, and throughout the project, we had a project website and email list available for folks who wanted to follow along with progress of the project. So lots of stakeholder process, lots of opportunity for public comment, and we got a lot. And I think we heard from everybody. It was not a homogenous public comment. We heard from people with a lot of different views, which we were really happy to get, because that's how we got to our consensus plan. We talked with the CAC on multiple occasions. The CAC does recommend adoption. Talked with the TAC quite a few times, including an in-depth workshop in April. The TAC at this point recommends adoption. And the plan came to this board once in June as an information item, sort of a midpoint, to sort of connect to make sure we're on the right path. And then just, I think, 2 slides about the content. The major product of the active transportation plan is this sort of vision regional corridor map. And I'll start out by saying, if this looks a little busy, if you were to see a map of all of the existing and proposed non-motorized facilities, it would be 20, 50 times busier than this. So this is really a reduction and refinement of all those facilities to the ones that either already are or have the potential to be sort of regional attractors. You know, it's a good trail, it goes somewhere. It's connected, and it's something that's good for transportation, for recreation, for economic development, things like that. All potential regional attractors that help quality of life. The principles that were used for selecting these, and also the values that we want to advance: connectivity, continuity, comfort, and clarity. And these include things like comfort includes safety. Continuity means, you can recognizably stay on the same trail. And then a lot of folks talked about needing better signage and wayfinding. So we do have some, I think in general, we do a good job, but we do have some silly situations out there where you've got a great trail and it ends on a road over here and starts up 100 feet down the road again over here, and there's no sign. So people don't know if they think the trail is gone. So things like that. But those are the values behind this. So that's our main product, our regional vision corridors. And then one step further than that, sort of the top tier regional priority corridors. This was a difficult one, so why would we want to go through the brain damage of coming up with something like this out of all the potential winners and losers? Because our federal and state funding partners told us that if we have something like this, if we have this together, that projects on these corridors will do better and rise to the top in their funding prioritization processes if we want to seek additional funding. So that's the reason. They told us pretty explicitly that if we have this and another region competing for the same funds doesn't have something like this, they don't have their tippy top priorities identified, they're going to lose out and we're going to get the money, is basically how it's going to go. So some painful decisions, but in the end, most people agreed that these were the best ones. Very quickly, a few other products in the plan. These are going to be a little bit too small to see, but they're just to give you an idea of what's in there. So there's a great safety analysis and safety crash maps for active transportation. There is a desire density map based on a lot of different types of data fed into a model that sort of spits out where are people likely to want to use active transportation in the region. There's recommended cross sections and surface types. And then there's a short chapter on implementation, how to implement this in terms of funding and otherwise. And I believe this is the last slide, a little bit about, real quick summary of the public feedback that we got. A lot of it was positive. There's a lot of support for this plan and active transportation in general. A lot of people appreciate the trails we already have. They're having a good time out there. There's a lot of potential for improving safety, and a lot of folks felt that there's a lot more potential users if things can just make a little bit more sense and be a little bit better connected. Wouldn't be too hard to get a lot more people using active transportation. And then on the negative side, as I said, bike lanes and trails can end abruptly. There are quite a few safety concerns. This surprised us. A lot of people asked for more regulation of e-bikes, not eliminating them, but just regulating them a little bit more. And then, of course, needing better signage and wayfinding. So with that, I'm happy to review any part of the plan you'd like to look at, answer any questions, and then I will ask for this board's formal adoption of the active transportation plan.
All right, questions. Go ahead, Mayor Dixon.
Is there any way to maybe get some of this traffic off of Highway 24 going up Ute Pass?
That's something that's been discussed. Certainly, I don't know how realistic it is in the short term, but some kind of off-street facility. There are off-street trails along other portions of 24, but with the terrain there, it's a little difficult to do anything a little bit wider.
And I was even looking at our MPO boundary, and on the south side, it looks like we're up against the MPO boundary even, so. But I'm just curious if there's any way at all to redirect off of Highway 24.
It definitely was discussed and it's desired, but I don't think there were any short-term solutions. But good question. People are interested.
Is the trail go along the highway? Is that what it is?
Well, what's happening is you're getting a lot of the debris coming off the mountains. And, it takes a while to get that debris cleared off. And that just, if there's any bicyclists going, especially west, you've got some pretty good mounds of debris that are just right off the side of the road.
Okay.
And it's going to push that type of traffic on into the lanes. And as you're coming around, some of these blind curves.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so if there was some way, like, I think like the utilities actually go up through a different part of a different canyon, so to speak. I don't think they bring it down Highway 24. I think they come along somewhere else. And I didn't know if there's some way to, just redirect and divert that type of traffic off of Highway 24, because I can see it being potential issues.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. For anybody else? Councilmember Avila?
My word for the day is going to be tippy top, Jason. I haven't heard that in 30 years. I think it's great because I thought just old people like me use that word. And so it really made me like, wow, this is exciting. There's a generational fluidity. So, no, in all seriousness, I think I like the approach of let's do something we all, if we're neutral on, but for the most part agree on. And I think this is a great path to take.
I appreciate that. And thanks for enjoying the folksy language.
Commissioner Stone.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just want to first off say congratulations because this is a Herculean effort. Herculean or Herculean?
Herculean.
Herculean. Anyway, Herculean effort to get all this together, and obviously more than just one person contributed to this, plus our community members that participated as well. There's a lot of things I love about it. To agree with Councilmember Avila is that I love that it's a tremendous resource. It's not binding. We can all agree on it. And so as we're working on any plan, whether it's community, regional, whatever, is that our planning staffs can look back at this and hopefully be able to incorporate it. Because I agree with, Mayor Dixon that, there's on the regional map, when you look at it, it shows I think it's marked as proposed and, partial between Manitou Springs all the way up to City of Woodland Park. And there are little pieces of that are in there. There's a piece of the Centennial Trail that comes out of Woodland Park and goes all the way down by the Walmart there and then kind of ends for a while, and then there's little pieces of it as it goes along. But just from a sheer safety thing, it would be nice to have something congruent, but it's going to take efforts of a lot of different organizations and of course a little coin to get that done. But and perhaps as as CDOT looks at continued improvements on Highway 24, I know when you look at I-70, between for example, actually Breckenridge, Frisco, all the way up to Copper Mountain and up to the top of El Paso, they've got a active transportation trail, I guess, that people can walk on, bike on, that keeps them off of the interstate. And of course, the rules on the interstate are a little different than Highway 50 to a degree. But anyway, it's I'd love to see it be able to expand it, and I would be very impressed by anybody that could ride a bicycle from Manitou Springs, the 3,000 vertical feet up to Woodland Park. So that would be impressive, but it would be nice to have that also. I particularly would be one of the people that would ride the opposite direction and then get picked up at the bottom. But anyway, great work, and I certainly support it.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I also appreciate the work. When we look at the title and then we go to the purpose and the background, and then you actually dig into the document itself, I mean, this is predominantly a study about non-motorized transportation, but it doesn't say that in the purpose. So when you read the title, Active Transportation Plan, and then you read the purpose and background, it doesn't distinguish between the roads we need for our vehicles and what this study is actually about. Now, is there something about the term active transportation plan that defines non-motorized research? Because it feels to me like there ought to be something in the purpose and background that talks about what the study is actually about. My first reaction to the title and the purpose is that this would be a comprehensive plan about all forms of transportation, but it really doesn't dive that deeply into the needs we have for commercial trucking, for commuting, anything like that. And that's question number one. And then question number two, it looks like in your engagement on your stakeholder interviews, one of the top items that came up was homelessness on trails. So the first one is there a way to maybe at the beginning of this just say add a word or two to say this is about non-motorized transportation so that it can cage the reader to what the study is for? And then a question about, is there anything in here on homelessness? I mean, I haven't read everything. I might have missed it, but.
Yeah, great questions. I'll take them in order. For the first question, the active transportation plan is actually, it's a standalone plan, but it's also a component plan for our long-range transportation plan. So in other words, it'll be incorporated as sort of a modal plan within our multimodal long-range transportation plan, which is ongoing now. And that really looks at everything, all modes, including all the ones you mentioned. There's another modal freight plan within the our freight study within the long range transportation plan, and it definitely looks at private vehicles, transit, all the modes. So maybe would have been helpful for me to say that's where this fits within our planning products. So there's our LRTP and then our modal plans within that, of which this is one. We just felt that it was significant enough that and worthwhile enough that maybe we should seek a separate approval for it, instead of just couching it inside of the long-range transportation plan. So hopefully that gets at your first question. And then there's no reason why we can't mention homelessness. So we could. That was, I guess that was sort of fitting within the general concern of safety on trails, right, which included things like maintenance concerns, crime, and as well as homelessness, because there is quite a bit of that on some of our trails. So
yeah, I mean, on that particular point, I've met a lot of people that won't go bicycling on these trails because of the homeless camps, and have had concerns for their safety. So is that addressed anywhere in the report?
I don't believe it's addressed specifically.
Okay. And just for whatever it's worth, I appreciate your explanation of how this integrates into the other plans. But since this tends to be a component of a body of plans focused on non-motorized transportation. It just seems to me like something about that ought to be included in the purpose and background. Otherwise, you start reading this and you think it's going to be comprehensive, and then when you get into it, you find out it's not.
It was a good question. So I looked up while you were talking, asking the definition of active transportation. Maybe that's just what we need to include in the description, because the definition of active transportation says human powered mobility such as biking, walking, and then it gives a lot of examples. So maybe just adding a sentence.
Could we do that? Could we add a sentence or something that defines the term active transportation? Because that, I didn't catch that. Active transportation without that definition to me means all forms of transportation because they're all active.
I looked at the picture.
I get it. Yeah.
The wheelchair, the walking, no, I'm joking with you,
Yeah.
Stan. So, yeah.
And there happens to
it,
be
but
on
it does kind of talk about in the definition about it directly replaces motor vehicle miles traveled. So these modes are effective at reducing motor emission, bridging the gap of first and last mile and things like that. So it's a good point, I think, that you brought up.
Yeah, and actually, page 1 under the purpose and background, that's probably where we could punch it up and include a definition. I think we're closer to it, and active transportation has become sort of a term of art, realizing that those of us that are working in it, it's human-powered transportation versus sitting behind the wheel. But yes, we can include the definition. And the second paragraph in there does talk about the long-range transportation plan, but maybe we punch that up a little bit as well and discuss the different elements that are part of the LRTP, including this plan.
And thank you,
Something
Andy.
that would help, and it would be easy to do.
That is where I would recommend adding it, would be that purpose and background, because that was the very first paragraph I read, and it didn't provide any distinguishing features. So then when I went into the document, I was anticipating, commercial trucking loads and things like that. It's none of that's in there. So
That's a good point from somebody who didn't help, because I feel like I probably was kind of really involved in this, and so I didn't catch that because I knew what it was. So thank you, Stan.
You're welcome.
Yeah, well, we will make that change.
Thank you.
I think this actually, Madam Chair, goes back to Councilmember Avila's statement about the verbiage between generations of tippy top to active transportation. That's the other end of the scale. Tippy top is our term, and active transportation is a more recent term.
Right. Mayor Havener, your mic's on. Did you have something to say?
No, I keep both of these on because one's not working.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment about stating that it's non-motorized. It's probably a little misleading these days because we do have like e-bikes and things like that that are motorized. They just aren't fuel burning motorized. So that may not be the right term, but I understand your concern and definition necessary. Absolutely.
I don't think most of us think of driving a car as being passive transportation plan. Right.
Depends on the traffic.
Yeah.
This morning especially, yes. Mayor Mayor Graham.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Jason, question. We've got, here, I think this is a great document, and you've done a lot of work on it. And we see bikers, runners, scooters, people in wheelchairs and whatnot. And yet there's a couple kinds of vehicles that I'm at a loss as to figure out what to do with. And these are not human powered for the most part. These are you've probably seen the one-wheeled motorized, call them a skateboard. I don't know what the term is. It's probably somewhere between tippy top and active transportation. But you've got that, and then
unicycle and bicycle.
Right, you see the powered unicycle thing. In Manitou, the unicycle people at least are the powered ones. They manage to stay on the streets, which is a concern, especially when we're congested and so forth. The skateboarders, they tend to think they're on a ski slalom. I've seen a few guys, they dodge in and out of traffic, and I almost scraped one of those guys off my windshield last summer. Anyway, I'm not sure what to do with those guys. I don't know if this study takes that into consideration, but I know I've talked about this subject with our police chief, and they stop them, educate them when they can, but these people are pretty evasive, and usually they're young, they're male, they know they're going to live forever, so they don't really play by the rules. I don't know if you have any insight into that, but I'd love to hear it if you do.
talk a little bit about it. Just with a personal anecdote, I was driving through downtown a couple of months ago and somebody on a Lime scooter struck my vehicle going full speed through an intersection and then melted into a crowd. I was really just trying to make sure they were okay, but apparently their mind was on the potential liability type stuff. But
A Lime scooter, is that what you call them?
yeah, the green scooters that are kind of
Oh,
all over.
Lime. Oh, Lime. Okay, I thought you were naming the unicycle motorized thing. Whatever those are. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of language in the plan about just that we need to do more planning with regard to these. I believe it's something that nobody has figured out well, just because it's evolved so quickly and it's been so disruptive because they don't work like a bicycle, which we sort of have a handle on, and they don't work like a pedestrian, which we sort of have a handle on. So do they belong on the street, on the sidewalk? There are quite a few, I would call them alternative vehicle and pedestrian or bicycle collisions that happen where they're common. So they're a safety issue. And there's, to be honest, we just really didn't have enough plan to get that all figured out in this round. There's a little bit about it, and there's a recommendation to develop guidelines and recommendations. Usually, I think in most regions, the local jurisdictions will come up with their own policies regarding this, but they will also ask the regional organization for example policies and just sort of some background research, which I think we'd hope to provide more of that in the next round. So that's how it typically goes. But I don't think any jurisdiction really has a firm grasp on how to handle this yet. And the policies and regulations change frequently. And then we can, from what I understand, we can expect more new types of vehicles like this in the next few years. So it'll be a challenge.
Great, thank you very much.
How about a motorized Unowheel? All right, we'll go with it. Okay, and so we do need to pass this today. And so if there's barring any further questions or conversations, what would the board like to do with this?
Based on the comments that I had and the comment from Andy, is there a way to get a sentence added in to that first paragraph so that we can proceed with a vote? Because it just feels kind of important to me that we have something in here that separates this from other forms of transportation.
I don't know that I've got exact language.
I was gonna say, can we just amend it to include a motion to define active transportation? And then would that be okay? And then we don't have to write the sentence on the spot?
I think.
Go ahead, make the motion. Is that what you were gonna say?
With your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 6A, the active transportation plan, with one amendment to add a definition of active transportation in the purpose and background section on page 1.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, and I am going to apologize to Colonel Warner. I skipped right by you on 4B. I really pushed to have military moved up, and then I went ahead and skipped right by him. So if I do that again, let me know. I broke my temporary crown last night, so every time I take a sip of water up here, I'm kind of wincing. So feel free if I get off track again to let me know. So thank you, Jason. Great job from you and your team. Thank you.
And if I may, I'd like to give a quick shout out to El Paso County Parks. They were a great partner throughout this project. They were on our core steering team and just provided a lot of assistance, and it's a much better project for their help. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, we'll go back to item 4B, military installation reports. Colonel Werner.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Yeah, not too much to report up here from USAF. I think probably the biggest news going on this week is our partners, Blue and Silver, with Hotel Polaris having their grand opening tomorrow up here at the Academy. And then, yeah, otherwise just kind of wrapping up our football season up here. Last home game is this coming Saturday against Oregon State. And yeah, otherwise still just training the future leaders up here at the Air Force Academy.
So just training future leaders. Okay. All right. Any other military online today? Thank you, Colonel Warner.
Madam Chair, I will just let you know that Beth Dukes, I believe from Peterson Shriver, has joined.
Okay.
I don't know if she has an update or not.
Good morning, Ms. Dukes. If you would please unmute your microphone if you had anything to say today. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move ahead. Anybody else from the military community? All righty, that'll take us back to area 6, action item 6B, Pikes Area Agency on Aging Carryover Funding. Are we missing a word in there?
Yes,
That's right, yeah.
That's all right. We'll cut you some slack and give you a little grace this morning, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good to see you again today. Today, we're just bringing before you our anticipated carryover totals and process for approval so that we can continue moving forward. For those of you who may not have heard us discuss carryover funding in the past, I'll give a little background and context and an idea of how we manage these funds. Pikes Peak Area Agency on Aging receives two primary funding sources. That's our federal Older Americans Act and our state Older Coloradans Act through the State Fund for Senior Services at the state budget level. Federal funding, anything left over after 1 year may be carried over into the following or the subsequent federal fiscal year. That is determined by our federal partners and approved by our state partners. This year, we are anticipating receiving $385,702.39 in federal carryover funding, which actually does include a tiny portion of state unused state funding that the state is providing as part of this carryover. Jared, would you mind scrolling up to the page that shows the different parts? Thank you. So here you see we have that $385,000 that we're anticipating. We have verified those numbers through our finance department. We've received confirmation from the state last week that this is the amount that's coming over. During COVID, with the emergency or the major disaster declaration, any carryover funding we were allowed to use across all parts of services. Now that the major disaster declaration has been rescinded, the federal carryover funds do have to be spent within within those federal parts. And so you can see the breakdown here. I'm going to point out a couple of columns here just so you can see that. But the context of the carryover is, first of all, it can only be spent through current contracted providers. So the previous page showed the contracted providers that you all approved for our current fiscal year. So those are the only ones eligible. Then we have to narrow that further by the federal funding parts. And so Part B are general services. That can be anything from transportation to dental services, low vision supports, that kind of thing. Part C1 is congregate meal program only. That's the only thing that Part C1 can be used on. Part D are specific to evidence-based programs. We currently contract with 3 providers who are eligible for that funding. Excuse me. And Part E funding, which is family caregiver supports, and we currently have one contract ourselves here within the AAA, as well as one outside provider who would be eligible for those funds. The State Fund for Senior Services, the last line there, SFSS services, those are the state funds, overage at the state fund that they're reallocating out to the regions. And the SFSS are admin funds of $2,800. Those can only be used for admin purposes. We, in turn, are actually going to turn those right back around in supporting our providers with our annual survey process. We have taken on the administrative burden and cost to allow our providers to continue doing the work in the community. We've taken on the administrative and postage costs to do our annual satisfaction survey, which is required under our contract. So that gives us the total of 385,000. When we take away those two lines, the C1 line, which can only be used for congregate meals, we have one contractor who is eligible for those funds. And then, like I mentioned, the admin funds there at the bottom, that leaves us a balance available for distribution across those other three parts of 146,805.51. The process from here is that we are asking for your contingent vote today, approval, so that we can continue with our process. We do anticipate receiving our option letter for these funds in the next couple of weeks. They are estimating the middle of the month, which I guess technically is Friday, but really anywhere between now and the end of the month. We also engage our TRS. That's our Technical Review Subcommittee. That's a subcommittee of our Regional Advisory Council. Every member on the TRS actually right now are over the age of 60, which is our target client base. And so we're very happy to have individuals from the community who participate with us in this distribution plan. Now, normally we would put out the word to our providers that they're carryover funding. Please send us your requests. But because the funds are so low and so narrowly focused in how they may be used, we're taking a little bit different approach this time to make sure that we can get these funds out to the providers. Right now, I'm looking at spend down. I'm looking at their first quarter spend down, determining how they're doing, making calls with our providers, confirming what I'm seeing in the reports, but then also confirming that if we provide them additional funds, can they spend them? Because even though these are federal funds, they must be spent by the end of the state fiscal year, which is our contract period, which is June 30th of 2025. So effectively, we're hoping that they'll have about 7 months to spend down these funds. And so we are making this a conversation instead of a free-for-all or just an assignment of funds to make sure that they can spend those in the community. So today we're asking for your approval to continue. We'll come back in a month or so with the final update after we've met with TRS, after we've made the assignment of funds and updated our providers' contracts. Are there any questions?
So we went to doing it, just to clarify for everybody, we went to doing it this way a few years ago because, like you said, you don't have the letter yet. It seems to always come in and fall between a board meeting. And in the past, we had to call a special meeting to get approval of them to spend these funds. So we came up with this process of kind of pre-approving the funds, and then of course Andy's overseeing it and everything. So it's kind of a one-off one we do every year.
It is, yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. It is because of the lineup of TRS meetings, RAC meetings, and then the board meetings. If we were to follow that schedule, I would actually probably be having this conversation with you around January, maybe even as late as February. And our goal is to get these funds out to the community. Ultimately, these are funds that you already approved in the 23 fiscal year to be spent. They are just the leftovers. And of course, during the 23 contract period, we were still accessing some of our care funds, CARES Act funds, some of the emergency funds, which were to be spent first. And so in this case, we have a little bit of leftover from that. We won't be able to say that anymore next year, but our goal is to make sure that we can get these out to the community as quickly as possible.
And if I could just add, you've approved the list of contractors already as well, so they're in the packet. So.
Right, and then it's narrowed further simply because of the federal funding parts and who's eligible to access those funds.
Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So, hi, Jody, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So I am a little confused about what you want us to vote on today. If we've pre-approved the funding, which I thought I heard you say that we voted on the funding. A vote, that would be a vote to accept the funding, I gather.
Effectively, and to allow us to continue moving forward, because these, again, these overall funds, these actually come from the pot of funds that were approved in the 23 fiscal year.
So what has been previously approved? Because at least in the process that we follow in the county, sometimes we get funding from agencies and so forth, and then we vote to accept that funding. But then we have a later process where we actually deliberate over how we allocate the funding.
Right, and that is what was done in preparation for this current state fiscal year 24, and that was $5.9 million for distribution. So
this funding is part of the 5.9, or is it over and above the 5.9?
This is part of the previous, which is around 5.5 million.
Okay. When we approved that 5.5, did we also approve an allocation for these funds? We just hadn't received them yet. And I'll tell you why I'm asking the question is if this board has already approved a previous allocation of the funds and we just hadn't received the funds, that leaves me wondering why we're even voting. Because if we've already voted on a pre-approval, why are we voting to approve something we've already approved?
The process that you're asking about was long before my time. So it is the process that this board had asked even before I came on staff, that carryover funding is brought to the board for recognition and approval of the process to redistribute those funds, because they're not being distributed the same way that they were approved in the very first allocation.
So
they're being reallocated based on the parts.
So then we have a different allocation that we have to vote on.
Ultimately, that would be correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Stone?
Yeah, and actually Andy might be ready to say this better than me, but there were certain allocations that were previously approved that not all of them actually happened and occurred, and those funds were returned back to PPACG, and now we are approving a reallocation of those funds on carryover, is my understanding. Is that
Exactly.
correct?
And giving us the ability, some of the contractors are going to exceed the contract authority or approval that you gave, whenever that was, when you approved the 23 fiscal year 23 contracts. So some are getting more money with this new allocation than what they got from the initial board approval.
So the state always holds back a little bit, right?
Well, in this case, the State Fund for Senior Services, this is an unusual circumstance. We don't normally see that. The state withholds some funds as part of their match for the federal funding that they receive. In this case, they did not need all of those funds, and so they are redistributing that approximately $29,000 of that. Of this overall allocation or overall carryover package are state funds that were withheld for their match that they did not need, that they're reallocating out to the regions across the state. The original amount that we're discussing here, which encompasses that's federal funding. As I mentioned, that was originally the 23 fiscal period. To the point expressed here is that it has already been allocated, was not used, and now it comes back to us. And so some providers, of course, there were providers in 23 that are no longer contracted with us. They do not get funds because they're no longer contracted with us. And in this case, because it's coming to us by part, it narrows who may access these funds.
Thank you. I have a follow-on.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. So if we voted on a previous allocation, but now we're going to have a different allocation where in some cases we are interested in providing maybe a little bit more money from what we had previously voted on, wouldn't we want to specify what that is? I mean, I know we're only talking about this 140,000, but along the lines of trying to maintain the integrity of the process, if we're going to actually allocate more than what was voted on, wouldn't we want to know how much more? Like if we got somebody here at 75,000, want to give them another 20,000, make it 95. Seems like we would want to know that it's 20,000 so that we have something specific to vote on.
If I could, Madam Chair, that's why we came up with sort of this hybrid process where you're giving us the approval to move forward with this incremental increase in funding, working with the committees that Jody mentioned, the Technical Review Subcommittee, which is involved in making the initial recommendations to come to the board, having us work with them and work with our service providers to see where the need is and where we can allocate these funds. We're asking for the board to just basically approve the guardrails around the funding and then have us work with the committee structure to allocate it to the actual service providers.
And
So
then
it's a little bit different.
Once you set that up, then do you come back for another vote?
Yes, yes, we'll come
Okay.
back. Probably not December. It's already a full schedule, but very soon we'll come back to show what as an information item how it was
Right,
allocated.
not for another vote, but just show,
Not
okay,
for
because
another
we
vote.
want to get the money out. That's part of the challenge. We need to get it out in their hands quickly so they can spend it by
There,
June
there was a
30th.
a few years ago where we almost lost it because we weren't nimble enough and we couldn't move fast enough.
We were doing this like in March, for instance.
Correct.
We came up with this revised hybrid kind of allocation process just for these special
Just for this,
leftover
just for
funds.
this.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't sound small, but for this small.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not small, but in your world, it is small. So, yeah. Yeah. Does that
Well,
answer all your questions?
Yeah, I guess to be fair, I'm not 100% sure I'm comfortable with that. Because we have integrity in a process about how much we allocate to particular providers and that we do in fact vote on those. Now, in some cases in El Paso County, we actually, below a certain threshold, we allow the staff to do that. Above a certain threshold, it has to come back to the board. The threshold in El Paso County is 100,000. So it just does seem to me like we would want, like, I don't know why we would need to vote on having these committees figure out where the money needs to go, but it does seem appropriate that when they know where they want to take it, that we would come back to this board and vote on it.
Well, we're essentially giving Andy
We're giving Andy the
approval to approve this kind of what you would say is above the limit that would be normally set and would come back. We're giving Andy yeah.
Correct. And Jared, I don't know if can you pull up the chart that shows the existing approved service providers for this year? So these are the entities that it would go to. One option for maybe a future allocation would be to not just approve what the requested amount was. I think the request is what the.
And I would make the point, if we, let's say, for example, you have one of these and we voted on, I'll just pick one of these, Health Promotion Partners, 20,464. If we voted on that and that's the approval, but we've only given them 15,000, you can already give them the remainder without having to come back to the board.
Right, but we carve this down to the nickel basically and allocate it to the service providers really based on exactly what we're told we're going to get. Where it trips us up is where we end up with the leftover money a year later, the carry forward money, but the budget authority just is capped at 20,464. So maybe an option in the future is let's ask for approval of that plus or minus, I don't know, 20% or depending on what may come back in the following year with carry forward.
And our goal has been to reduce the amount of carryover for a couple of reasons. First of all, the federal our federal partners could withhold carryover and just say no, there won't be a federal carryover distribution. The state also has within our contract with the State Unit on Aging at CDHS also has the option to cap how much carryover comes back. And so our goal has been to reduce the amount of carryover every year. We do have within the bylaws of the Regional Advisory Council that minimum, like what you were talking about, sir, of 200,000. Last year during this very same conversation, Madam Chair recommended that be increased to 250 or 300, but that change has not been made, which would allow the staff to move forward without having to come before the board. However, we did come before the board last year, even though our carryover was under the 200,000 mark. And we still engaged our TRS as part of the process because we feel that transparency is very important. In this year, like I mentioned, the State Fund for Senior Services is a little surprise for us. We're grateful to have it because it has the most flexibility in how it can be distributed. And because the C1 congregate meal program funds really take away so much from the overall balance. The available balance to distribute is only 146,805, and that'll be the discussion that we're having with our technical review subcommittee for distribution.
And if I'll just close with one last comment. This happens actually fairly often also in the Pikes Peak Workforce Center board, and we get allocations throughout the course of the year. So what we do in that process is whatever comes, we accept, the board votes to accept the funding and then also to allocate it. But when it has to be done quickly, which seems to be similar in this case, we literally hold a 5-minute online workforce center board meeting. I mean, it literally is 5 minutes because all we do is we vote to accept the money and then we vote to allocate it. So I'm just letting you know there's another way that some other boards have dealt with funds that come quickly and have to get allocated.
Thank you. Okay, and I think we have done that in the past. And it's just to get everybody together and get a quorum for 5 minutes is extremely difficult. So, and I'm sure it is with that one too. But so, is there any further questions about Jody's presentation and allocating that Andy's going to be able to move forward with the funding recommendations? Any other questions on that? Okay, barring that, what would the board like to do?
Madam Chair, I'd move to approve the Pikes Peak Area Agency on Aging carryover funding as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further deliberation? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam
Motion
Chair. We
passes.
will get going. Our first round of paperwork is due on Friday, so I appreciate coming to a conclusion here today to keep us going forward. I also want to share, you probably saw them when you were checking in, the new 2025 yellow books are here. Please feel free to take from the pile. There are boxes at the lobby just as you're exiting these doors. And if you need help loading your vehicle, we are happy to help. But do let us know if you would like some yellow books at City Hall or office buildings, or have agencies within your region that you would like these delivered to, and I'd be happy to bring them. Staff and I are getting those out now. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Those are available in English and Spanish, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We're waiting on the Spanish. Spanish is being printed now, and so when we have those, we will get you new ones. We do have our past ones available, but we'll get fresh ones. Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. All righty. All right, that takes us on to item 2025 budget adoption. Carol McBroom.
Good morning, Carol McBroom, PPACG Finance Director. So this is our second month talk budget. We had a robust conversation regarding wage package increase, and based on your feedback, I did bring back two, a 4.0 and a 4.25. I'd like to go over the slides again. I know for a lot of you this will be redundant, but there is some new information that is included. So let's talk about the revenue piece. Revenues did decrease overall by about $2 million for a couple of reasons. One is ARPA funding and the AAA program will be depleted and not included in the 2025 budget. The military program reduced by about $1 million due to program changes. But the good news is, the offset is our transportation program budget did increase. And the even better news is CDOT found a pot of money that they're allowing us to use as match. So that just gives us extra money in our budget to use on services. Full-time employees are budgeted at 41, which is the same as last fiscal year. And just a reminder that we do have some programs that are 100% paid by dues, and that's the air quality and regional planning. Months ago, we talked about our capital reserves and how important it was to increase it. We used the funds for this air handling system, so we were able to include a little over $100,000 to help replenish that capital reserves. Again, I brought a wage package increase of 4 and 4.25. I've also included the final proposed member dues increase, which you approved at 1.9%. That is in the package. And so today we are looking for approval or again, a recommendation. If I could go back to revenues, an increase in the revenues since the last package I sent you is we are going for a new $250,000 DOLA grant, which will be on behalf of the Community Foundation Regional Visionary Project. And that is included in the budget now. Okay, so the next slide shows just the project overview, the budget overview, and basically here I am, we're going to talk about budget again. And I wanted you to know that in 2025, we did budget for a salary survey to be completed by Employers Council. Next slide. We talk about dues. I've shown you this very detailed slide in the past. I think the important part that I wanted to bring back was the piece on the side that talks about the CPI Denver change compared to what the members' dues increases, and how we have definitely been on track. I don't feel like we've over asked over the years. Any questions? I'll keep going. Okay, next slide is a summary of the wage package increases. So you will see that at 4%, the wage package increase is a little less than 160,000 over fiscal year 24 proposed budget. And then if you go up to the 4.25%, the increase over fiscal year 24 is around 170,000. And again, the rest of the information I included last month, so I won't go into that. But the final the slide I'd like to talk to you about is, I feel like this one's important because a part of the conversation last month was the importance of retention of our staff. And so I did bring this to you last year, and so I just updated it with the new numbers. And currently we have 36% of our staff have been here longer than 5 years. And so I just wanted to point out that we have this incredible staff, and we need to do what we need to do to retain their services. So really with that, I'll open it up for questions and comments.
Okay, Commissioner Vanderworth? Your mic's on. Oh, okay, sorry about that. Okay, all right. Can we start like fining everybody a quarter or something when we leave our mics on? And I'll be the first one to contribute, I can bet you. All right, any questions or comments from anybody about this? I think the only thing we do need to decide on today that we kind of kicked from last month was the 4.25% wage increase before we can finalize this. We need to discuss that. So let's go ahead and open up the discussion for the rate increase. And we can see the numbers here. She showed the 4% would be around $160,000 increase to the budget over 2024, and the 4.25 would be about $170,000 an increase over 2024. Does anybody want to open the discussion on their thoughts or ideas? I see Mayor Case moving over there. Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I see the percentages at the bottom. So those increases are fully loaded, as we call it, with all the benefits and taxes, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, Andy, are you comfortable with 4.25?
I am comfortable with that. And just want to emphasize what Carol mentioned. We proposed in the budget for 2025 a salary survey, benchmark survey to see where we are in line. But the fact that we can absorb the 4.25% and does recognize our staff and the great work they've been doing. And then a year from now, we'll know kind of where we are relative to the market and which positions need to be adjusted and so forth. I think just for those reasons, I would recommend going forward with the 4.25%.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So we can absorb the 4.25. We all know that inflation has been tremendous, and Commissioner Stone and I were talking about that a little bit in the break. And so I would hope people would want to consider that. So we look at PPACG as a freestanding separate entity. And I know we do think in the back of our minds what we're doing for our own, people, but I think it's important to pay quality people who do need a very specialized first people that work at PPACG. So,
Madam Chair, just to clarify, are we looking for a motion for the full budget and to identify the wage increase in that motion? Or are we just taking the wage increase separate?
I the first one.
Okay. If everyone doesn't mind, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to approve the 2025 budget as presented to include a 4.25% wage increase.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is that what you were looking for?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you on behalf of the staff. Appreciate it.
That takes us on to item 6D, formation of a nominating committee for the board executive committee positions. Mr. Gunning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did put out a call to board members to see who's interested in serving on the executive committee in 2025. Heard back from 7 members interested. We have 5 positions: chair, first vice chair, second vice chair, secretary, treasurer. So the the ask today basically is to set up a nominating committee of members that aren't interested or can't serve on the executive committee in 2025 to come back with a recommended slate in December. And I did hear back from 3 members, Mayor Thompson, Mayor Graham, and Commissioner Vanderwerf would be interested in serving on that nominating committee, and review the list of folks that are interested and recommend who would be in which slot.
And the time, excuse me, the time commitment on that is not great. It's short. We just have a meeting. We can probably do it via Zoom or something. And to review the people who have put their names forward. And thank you for everybody doing that, to be a board officer. And then we would probably potentially call those people who are interested in the positions and then come back with a recommendation. So just short, sweet, and to the point, quick committee. So we have 3 of us. Is there anybody else? I'd love to end up with an odd number. Anybody else that would be interested in serving on the nominating committee? You can't be a candidate.
I just think that since Mayor Dixon has left the room, he should be on there. Just kidding.
Okay, you're interested in being on the nominating committee? Okay, already you have 1 more, and that makes us have an even number. And you know, it doesn't matter because maybe somebody might not be able to come to a meeting. We might end up with it anyway, right? And
Yeah, we'll probably end up in a consensus. So 3, 4, I don't think it makes a difference.
yeah, okay. Todd, is that agreeable with you? I was trying.
You just got nominated.
Nominating committee? No, he's on he's on the list. Yeah. So, all right. Anybody else we can voluntold, Eric? Yeah. No?
What's that?
Anybody else you want to voluntold over there?
Names.
Okay. All righty. If anybody else wants to be in the on it, please go ahead and let Andy know. We can always add somebody on. Otherwise, we have a nominating committee of 4 people then, and if anybody, so really time is short. So if you're interested in it, let Andy know like in the next 48 hours. All right.
Do we need a action to?
We will. I'm getting there.
Okay.
I was going to repeat the names. Okay. All righty. So the motion is, well, I can't make the motion. So.
And Madam Chair, before we go, I just want to let you know Annie Durham has her hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Annie?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. If the opportunity is available to attend that virtually, I would be interested in serving on the committee.
Great, thank you. All righty. All righty, so we'll need a motion with the 5 names then for the nominating committee, and then we will accept that. Mayor Case, I see you're reaching again.
I can do that. If you'll help me with the names, I forget now, but I would move to approve the selection of the nominating committee to include Sharon Thompson, Stan Vanderwerf, John Graham, Glant Havenar, and Amy Durham.
Annie.
Sorry, Annie.
That's okay. Okay, do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? I was really hoping none of the nominees were going to oppose it. So, all right, thank you, everybody. We'll get that one going. Okay. And that takes us on to item 7, information items. Long range transportation plan. Danelle.
As you all know, we are working on the long-range transportation plan for the region, which will be the 2050 LRTP. Slide, please, Jared. You've all seen this slide before. We've brought it a few times. It just gives some information about what the LRTP is, why we do it, and kind of the importance in why projects are in the LRTP to become eligible for federal funding. Left it in here in case anyone has any questions, but we can move on from that. So this is kind of our process. Again, this is a slide you have seen, but we wanted to let you know where we are in the process today. If you look at the phase 3, there's some red text there that say greenhouse gas modeling and draft document development. And that's really what we as staff are working on primarily right now. The modeling we are doing is to ensure that the LRTP adheres to their new greenhouse gas rulemaking that was initiated by the state legislature. This is our first time working through the greenhouse gas process. So we are working back and forth with CDOT and with CDPHE to make sure that we are working through that process. We're a little bit behind where we would like to be. And so to that end, if you go on to the next slide, please, Jared, we are including in your packet today some sections of that draft LRTP. We really want to make sure that everyone in our committees, our Transportation Advisory Committee, our Community Advisory Committee, and of course the Board of Directors, has ample time to review the information in there prior to actually taking it out for public comment. So your first 6 chapters, introduction, the process and engagement, system performance, transportation network, planning considerations, and regional forecast are all available for your review. It is not a clean document. There are some, highlighted areas that we know that are things that are missing or things that we need to go back to. But again, we just wanted to make sure that everybody had ample time to look at everything because we're not quite sure how the time frame is going to play out. And at this point, if you have any questions, if you would like to give me comments, happy to do that today. Happy to take emails, happy to take calls, whatever you would like to do. We do anticipate next month bringing the implementation plan section, which will include the project list, to the Board of Directors, and as much as that document as we can. Of course, this document does need to go through a formal public engagement period, so we will at some point be bringing it to you to release the full document for public comment. We will have open houses, all of that, but we kind of need to get a little bit farther in understanding the greenhouse gas process before we have that full document for you.
So next month, you said you'd be bringing part of it back. We'd be bringing it back as an action item for us to vote on?
No, at that time, it will still be an information item.
Okay.
That is, that's the intent today, as according to our draft timeline, which is a little in flux.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure if we should take this home and make sure we bone up on it in the next 30 days or.
Would be helpful to start reviewing it, I think. But there's no great sense of urgency quite yet. As Danelle is diplomatically sort of discussing, the timeline is a little bit in flux. The one big wrinkle, it's not really a wrinkle, it's bigger than that, but she alluded to the GHG requirements, the greenhouse gas emissions reduction requirements. So we're at a point now where we're trying to figure out how to fit through that wormhole, if you will, and we have to work with CDOT, in consultation with CDOT, and in consultation with Department of Public Health and the Environment as well, with some of the modeling requirements that we have to demonstrate how our emissions are reducing. So we're hoping to make some pretty good progress there, but we're hopeful, but we're not quite there yet. And that's sort of what's impacting a little bit of the schedule. Our hope was to be finished up by January with board approval in January. We're not sure if that's likely right now, based on what we know or not. So things might be moving more quickly sooner if we can kind of break through the modeling issues we're dealing with. And what we'll do is definitely keep the board apprised. Maybe send out updates periodically if we are starting to make progress there or not. Or if we need to get the board a little more activated, we can let you know there as well. But this is the one big difference from previous planning efforts that we've had. So it's new to us, it's new to the state as well. The state has already approved in prior years Dr. Cog's plan and the plan in the North Front Range MPO. Ours is different because we're not in a non-attainment air quality area. Plus, we have a PPRTA, a Regional Transportation Authority, which they don't have in those other jurisdictions. So each one is different. So trying to figure out how to navigate that with the state, with our unique circumstances, has been challenging, quite honestly. So we'll know more in a month. And if we know a lot more where things might start moving sooner, we'll certainly let you know. But at some point, we have to present this to the State Transportation Commission. We don't know when that's going to happen, if it's in December or January, but that's going to happen sort of in sync with board review as well. Okay.
Is also part of the concern that they could potentially legislatively in the next session change the greenhouse gas requirements or rules, because I remember having that battle a couple of years ago of you just did this, don't change things until we figure out.
It's hard to say. I would doubt they would change the standard now that would impact our current plan, since we've been working on this for a couple of years now. I would hope that wouldn't be the case where the goalposts get moved. Maybe it would just apply to our next plan and going forward after that, after this one's adopted. That would be our hope, but I think we need to stay vigilant with that as well.
Okay. John, I saw you jump up. Oh, okay.
No, I'm just very frosty, Jason.
Okay. All right. Okay, any questions about it then? So it sounds like we all have some reading to do if possible before the next meeting.
That would be wonderful. We would greatly appreciate any feedback you have.
Okay. Any questions for Danelle? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, that takes us on to item B, annual safety targets. And you're just staying up there, aren't you?
I am. Unfortunately, David Swenka from CDOT was slated to join us for this because he is the person who actually sets these safety targets. Unfortunately, he had a conflict at either 10:15 or 10:30 and had to drop off. But I will do my best. And if you have questions, I'm happy to pass that along so we can get some answers for you. So this is a process, and Jared, if you'd like to go into the slides, that would be great. Every year, CDOT is required to set new safety targets based on updated data. And it's very important to note that FHWA really wants these to be data-driven targets. They call it a target, but it's really based on algorithms. It's based on trends. It's based on data. FHWA really doesn't want these to be aspirational in nature. And I know that that's been a discussion at all of our committees before, especially regarding safety issues. So David Swenka has put together this data for us to show the trend of fatalities in Colorado as a whole. 2023 has dropped a little bit. Jared, if you move on to the next. Unfortunately, serious injuries has risen quite a bit in 2023. And if you go to the next slide, these are the actual targets that CDOT has set for calendar year 2025. On the left there, it's fatalities of 740, a fatality rate per 100 million vehicle miles traveled of 1.363. Serious injuries is 3,640. Serious injury rate is 6.701. And non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries is 659. You can also see on this slide on the side, the calendar year 2023 actual data. For comparison, the fatalities there is 720. The fatality rate is 1.314. Serious injuries is 4,154. Serious injury rate is 7.578. And the non-motorized fatal fatalities and serious injuries is 833. So we are setting some targets that are, or CDOT rather, is setting some targets that are hopefully more in line with regard to the serious injuries in previous years, rather than just focusing on that calendar 2023 year, which was a little bit of an outlier in the data. And we bring this to you annually because as the MPO, PPACG is required to either set our own target or to support the state targets. And we'll bring that to you in a future month as an action item. Staff recommendation is to stay with what we have done in the past, which is to support the state targets. There just really isn't a lot of, or there really isn't any benefit to us taking on that target setting ourselves. However, we did include, just for your information, we know that people have asked for it previously. If you go to the next slide, Jared, that's what I just said about the MPOs having to support the state target. But the last slide, this is just the Pikes Peak area data. So you can see kind of how we stack up in comparison to the state itself. Happy to, again, take any questions, happy to take any questions back to CDOT staff if there's anything you'd like to know. And we will, again, bring this back as an action item in a future month. They're actually presenting at TAC next month, so this probably won't come back as an action item until January.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Yes. With the increase in serious injury crashes in the year over year, and it's been brought up before about the differences in not non-motorized, but e-bike and other traffic is, with the increase in Lime scooters and e-bikes and all that, is there any correlation at all between the increase in injury accidents and the increase of use of those types of transportation, or does the data kind of preclude that?
Not that I'm aware of, and I'm not honestly sure that we have adequate data to say yes or no, but I will reach out to CDOT to see if they have any data that's perhaps more granular than we have, but not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is very important considering we had a moment of silence earlier today, and not only was that officer lost his life, I believe there's 3 other officers that were seriously injured in that same accident, and it was someone from driving under the influence. So, yeah, nobody's coming up with any answers on how to get those numbers down, but they've got to come down. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Okay, item 7C, Regional Priorities Program, Jess Betchel. +1.
+1, yes.
Okay.
Good morning, Jess Bechtel. I'm your Transportation Programming and Project Delivery Planner. And so this item for you today is about the Regional Priority Program, which is the flexible funding program for regional priority projects. So the objective of the Regional Priority Program is supplemental formula-driven funding. And so CDOT, I have Rob Fry here, who is going to actually fill you in more about what they are proposing to do with this funding source. And so, Rob?
Thank you again. My name is Rob Fry. I'm the Regional Planning and Environmental Director for CDOT. Just to set this up, regional project or regional priority programming is annual funding that CDOT gets every year, down to the regions, gets distributed to us. For last 10 years or so, it's been right around $9.5 million each year. And then that comes to the region, and then that gets sub-allocated out to our 5 planning partners. So our 2 MPOs, you get being one of them, and then Central Front Range as well, since we have folks here as well. And then our other rural transportation areas. So Pikes Peak gets about 41% of that $9.5 million. I wouldn't say a year, but on a rolling average, that's kind of what they get, and we keep track of that. So what we're proposing to do starting in fiscal year 29 is taking $1.5 million of that $9.5 million and just putting it in a pool and not programming that yet. And there's a reason for that. That remaining $8 million would still get programmed on that rolling average at that 41% goal. That $1.5 million that would be retained is because the regional project program funding is so flexible, it's our most flexible spending, that we can use that for other projects that come up that kind of surprise us. So the best way to explain is to give a couple examples. We have a spring that popped up along State Highway 105 in the middle of the road in Palmer Lake. And there's no funding for us currently to be able to address that problem. We'll just be able to patchwork that with our maintenance crews, but we actually don't have a project or funding source to adequately address that just because of the types and color of money. So that's one example in this area. Another example would be, and we do have funding for it, but we'd be able to get to it quicker, is the State Highway 21 Grinnell box culvert that CDOT's currently doing emergency repairs on. So that's a couple examples in the area. Do want to note that we are not proposing to touch any of the funding that's been programmed up through FY28. This would start in FY29 moving forward. Our RTD has suggested that he would come here on a quarterly basis, let you know how that 1.5 money is being allocated when it becomes available, just to keep everyone informed of how it's being spent. And again, really, the idea is to address those problems that pop up that surprise us that we don't have other flexible funding to address. So.
Like, what do you expect us to do? I mean, we get complaints about that every single day. The water's freezing now from the storm. The summers, motorcycles can't drive over it. People's cars are being ruined in the pothole. I mean, you guys have been out to patch it 3 times, and we literally get phone calls about it every single day. Somebody slides or the pothole. I mean, it's a huge issue.
Yeah. I'm going to have John come up here. He looks like he's better able to address that one.
I might suggest that, I'm going to be giving a CDOT update here in 8F or whatever, and that might be a great topic for that.
We'll include that in the generic CDOT update in a minute. Okay. I gave someone time to think about it though. Thank you.
But that's a perfect example. Yes, this would be able to address that much quicker.
I think
than
we
how
all
long it's
could
been
give
there.
examples of some place in our community that is in desperate need of something. And we're dealing with that spring stuff in Fountain too. It's just, in the whole neighborhoods. Yeah.
So that's really it, because next month we're going to be bringing you our FY28 list of projects for the RPP list for you guys to review. And then we'll ask for approval at a later date. But this was just kind of stage that up and let you know why you wouldn't be seeing that $9.5 million being allocated across. We're just looking at that $8 million. So with that,
So it
take
still
questions.
stays in the region.
Correct.
You're just trying to create a fund for when a huge project,
Yes,
an emergency pops up, we can move a little quicker.
a lot quicker. Yep.
Okay. We're all going to be fighting for that new fund, aren't we?
Same money, different.
Yes. Right. He's creating a new pothole.
I get that there's lots of places like this.
Right.
This particular area of 105 for everyone in Tri-Lakes is so dangerous, you can't believe. Motorcycles, they can't drive down 105 anymore. It freezes with the storms. It's been needing a French drain put under because this part of 105 goes over a river, it goes over the creek. It's truly so dangerous. There's not a single day in the summer that we don't take 3 to 4 phone calls about it. All of us. It's that bad.
Okay. Thank you for the information on the new way. We're going to give it a try, and sounds like a good idea.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. That takes us on to item 7D, draft work program priorities 2025, Ms. McBroom.
It's me again, Carol McBroom, PPACG Finance Director. I'm here to talk about the annual work plan priorities that we have for 2025. The purpose of this document, well, it serves as a communication tool between the community and this board, and it provides an overview of the planned activities for the upcoming year that align with the organization's strategic plan. This document is a fluid document. It's due to our dynamic nature of the region. New activities may be added in response to emerging needs. And I do come back at mid-year to kind of go over what we had projected and where we are. So you will see an update around July of next year. The goal of this document is to help PPACG seek opportunities and resources to address the challenges in a growing region that serves its member governments. The factors that shapes this work program are federal and state mandates, grant spending regulations, ongoing regional needs, and opportunities for improving local government productivity through collaboration. So I will give you, I'm not going to read this whole document. I'll give you my summary. I recommend reading these priorities as written by the program directors and managers. It's their words, not mine, but I'll just kind of highlight some important ones that I think that are important. One is we do have a new grant opportunity that I talked about in the budget piece. It is a $250,000 Colorado Department of Local Affairs ADOLA grant. We'll be applying on behalf of the Community Foundation Regional Visionary Project. The grant application is due in December, and again, it's for a regional visionary project. So in the area Agency on Aging, they are extremely busy and an amazing staff. They're continuing following through on their 4-year plan to address future opportunities in senior services. They will continue to provide oversight and communication with providers to ensure spending and compliance with program regulations, budgets, and reporting requirements. They'll continue with the mobility guide that's so important for this community. They'll look for increased communication in the region around services provided by AAA. We need the community to know that AAA exists and what we do. They are going to look for community engagement, and they're going to grow the new volunteer management program to build both internal and external facing community volunteer programs to serve AAA, PPACG, and the community at large. And finally, AAA will be hiring a compliance specialist to support the PPA program and the finance team in coordinating and reviewing of the ever-changing state environment. Okay, moving on to the transportation program. As we know, it is a federally required metropolitan planning organization, and as you've heard, they are completing the 2050 long-range transportation plan, which includes finishing a public comment period and open houses. They will continue to work with the Mountain Metro Transit to complete the regional long-range transit plan and specialized human services plan. They will continue to develop a regional freight plan. They will maintain land use and travel demand model, as well as the crash data dashboard and geocode annual crash data. And they will continue to conduct the safety media campaigns. Moving on to the environmental program, we do have an environmental planner on staff now, and that she will be coordinating air quality and the water quality efforts. In the military planning section, they're working on wildfire mitigation in 3 areas of our region. They will continue tabletop and critical infrastructure analysis for all 5 military installations. They're working on stormwater mitigation, a pre-design study for the Jackson Creek as it flows into USAFA. And then moving on to other categories, we will continue to support our local jurisdictions for federally infrastructure opportunities through the IIJA Grant Navigator program. And we will continue the Regional Futures Forum. And in the admin section, HR will continue to recruit and retain high-level employees. Jared in the communications, his major goal is compliance with the accessibility changes. And you know how active he is in legislation. Um, Personally, finance department is working on creating financial policies, which brings me to an ask. I'm looking for some volunteers to help with an oversight work group beginning in January of 2025. Mayor Case has already agreed to join that team, which we really appreciate. I'm hoping that it will be about a 5 to 6 hour ask. We can handle it virtually. My goal is to make this as easy as possible for y'all. We are starting from scratch. So I do need individuals who are very excited about financial policies to help us create. But thank you. That's it for now.
All right, so another one to kind of take home and peruse through for the next meeting.
Yes, please. And
Okay.
I guess if you want to, if you could volunteer for the oversight committee, if you'll let Andy know, appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. If everybody's okay, we don't have the legislative group report down here when we get to reports because we're not in the active legislative thing. But it became apparent early on in the meeting that people really want to talk about Space Command and any role we might have with that. Is if everybody is okay, since we're through all the information items, that we kind of address that now, or would that be okay? Is everybody, I'm seeing some head nods.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty. So let's just kind of, we'll throw that in there. So the legislative committee we're still meeting once a month just to kind of keep moving forward, but we're not on the agenda because they're still out of session for a few more weeks, right? And so Space Command kind of has come up as a new thing. So I think it's important we're going to be taking the lead on that. So Commissioner Stone?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And just for transparency, when we were in executive session, as we were talking about goals of our executive director, the subject came up to add to his goals to work with all of our community partners and economic partners for the preservation of the Space Command in Colorado Springs. And that was as far as that discussion went, which is why we brought it to the regular agenda now. So just for the transparency of that. And I don't know if we need to say a whole lot more. People can say as much as they want about it, but obviously it's a massive impact to our economy, but it's also a huge, national security issue that, that is important as well. But we're dedicated, I think all of us probably with I'm not going to try to say that word, unanimously probably support the idea of keeping Space Command in Colorado Springs, and just that, all of us working together along with any federal partners, any federal influencers we have to be able to keep that in Colorado Springs is the goal.
Thank you. Commissioner Vanderwerth.
Yes, thank you. I do think it's very, very important to be prepared and ready just in case something happens. But there's been a lot of articles here recently, like in the Gazette and so forth, about, the removal of Space Command from Colorado Springs, but that was mostly started by Alabama Senator Mike Rogers, Alabama House Congressman Mike Rogers, who does sit on the House Appropriations, so he's a pretty powerful guy. But he's been stirring up the pot. He's been the guy that's been fighting to move it to Huntsville, one of the key figures. And there were rumors about him being selected for Secretary of Defense under the Trump administration, and that did not happen yesterday. There was a different recommendation. So I want to just bring up the point that we don't really know what might happen in the near future. It is important for us to be ready, but the stirring up of the pot, the articles from the Gazette have mostly been coming from the Alabama delegation trying to set the stage again. And that's not been expressed by the current, by the near administration of the Trump administration. And I haven't seen any official pronouncements from them. So I think just we need to be ready in case something happens, but I just want to make sure everybody knows what the source of that stirring up of the pot actually really has been. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and I agree, Commissioner Vanderwerf. But I want to make sure that we're not being reactive, that we're being proactive. We've got new representation in Congress through Congressman-elect Crank. We have Gabe Evans in CD8, another new representative. I guess officially Lauren Boebert is a new representative for CD4. But I think all of these people working together, but also, of course, with our Senate representation, I just think we need to be very proactive. I mean, if they're talking about it in the national news, it's not just the Gazette, but national news has been, potentially bringing this up as a topic. And I just think that it's not sitting back and waiting and reacting to something, because usually when you're reacting to something, it means it's already happened, and very difficult to move the opposite direction. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Yes, Andy?
Thank you,
And then
Madam Chair.
Andy, and then
Sure.
Mayor Dixon.
No, I appreciate the suggestion. I think it's a great suggestion that we keep this on our radar and be proactive. A couple of, I guess, two things I would start with is me start engaging with the city, the county, the chamber, the MAC, and probably the 30 group to see where we can plug in and where we can be supportive. But the other part I think that we can get started with is do our due diligence around, we've done a lot of work with our military installations the past couple of years. Some of you are aware of the joint land use study that we started back in 2015, 2016, with the intent of looking at how we can protect our military installations and make them more resilient and harden them where they need to be hardened. And we've done a lot of work since then with a lot of follow-on grants from DoD around wildfire mitigation, around fixing the North Gate access into Peterson, which we understood was one of the weaknesses around the Peterson application for Space Command in the first place. So we're going to do an inventory of what we've done to help harden the installations and improve the quality of life of our bases, and maybe do some research to see what's happened in the Huntsville area or what hasn't happened. So we're going to start pulling some of that research together. I think that'll be part of the narrative as far as being proactive.
Okay. Yes, Mayor Dixon.
Yeah,
And then Commissioner
along these
Vanderwerf.
lines, I'm kind of wondering if we, if it might be prudent to send a kind of a joint letter from the region. Many people as we can get to sign on to it, up to the other national elected officials that represent us. Just a thought.
That's that could, I mean, I like the idea. It's just kind of cumbersome because it depends on how your form of government works, and if you need to take it back to your board before you can get
I'm
signed on it,
thinking
but
like from PPACG.
From PPACG,
From
yeah.
chamber, any other kind of regional group that we can get to join in. That's just a thought I'm wondering about.
okay. All right, I like the idea. Are you volunteering to write it?
If you want me to.
Commissioner Vanderwerf, did you have something else? Your mic is on. That's okay. All righty. Anybody else with comments? Mayor Havenar, your mic still on. Did you have something to say? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. That takes us on to item 8, down to the CDOT monthly update. You guys had your work cut out for you last weekend with the snowplows.
Yeah, yes, we did. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, thanks for putting the slide up. So just to run through projects really quickly, active construction projects, still showing MAMSIP. There's still some work. Obviously, Mayor Thompson, you are well aware of a few little tidbits of work still going on that project. Powers and Airport Interchange is progressing very well, I believe, and we're working, from everything I'm hearing, and all very well with the Air Force Base, with Peterson there. I-25 Fillmore to Garden of the Gods had a big traffic switch this morning. Regrettably, we also had an accident in the area that caused a big backup on southbound, but we're in a new alignment on southbound that it is definitely requires caution. We encourage everybody to drive through it, and obey the speed limits and stuff, but it really should improve the situation and give us really good in the next phase of our construction. We're actually working to rephase that project a little bit and make the phasing a little more efficient as well. So very optimistic about that. ADA project, Baptist Terrazzo, the next really 4 projects, the Carson T Boulevard and the resurfacing of I-25 down by the Pueblo County line, all are pretty much in the wrapping up stages, although certainly some of them have a lot of cones and drums still out there that are causing impacts, and certainly with the storms and stuff that we had last week. But those are progressing well towards the finish line. New construction projects for 2024. I just highlight the one that we are working on some emergency repairs that are going to end up being pretty costly in the $1 to $2 million range. It looks like on Towers and Grinnell Boulevard. Pretty significant drainage issues out there. Planned future construction projects for 2025 to highlight the 115 resurfacing Nelson Boulevard to Brookside. We had successful bid openings on October 31st and working towards award and notice to proceed. And we'll begin that project in the spring. And the 6070, the project, about a half mile improvements there north of Woodland Park, about a half mile to a mile north of 24. That project we'll re-advertise here in late November and should have bid openings in December. So before I move on to just the kind of glossary slide about the projects in the Central Front Range area, I certainly am happy to address your concerns there, Mayor. I was intending to take a good look at that project, and you've given me a very good reminder. So I'm going to definitely go up there, that project area. We don't really have a project. That's the problem, right after this meeting. But
okay, so my town manager texted me in the middle of this. DDOT through you told us that Palmer Lake needed to plan funds for that, even though you own the road. CDOT transportation manager said that Palmer Lake should not have to plan for funds for Highway 105 because you won't let us maintain the road because you own it. And Lachelle Davis at CDOT and you, John, PPACG, she reached out to you to assist and nobody's called her back. The CDOT rep states that the maintenance repair issue for CDOT to fix is a capital project needing funding and you don't have funding, and our town manager's gotten the runaround on it. It's the only road in and out of town at all without going to the freeway and going 2 exits down. Highway 105 is the only way in and out of town, and we need a long-term solution. Someone's going to die on that. It is dangerous. The potholes are deep. It is coming up from the creek underneath. You knew it was an issue last summer and you knew it was an issue the summer before. And now with the snow and all the snow melt going into it and filling it, it's like a skating pond right there. It fills up from the bottom, it comes up through the road, and someone is going to die on there. There's too many motorcycles that go through there every single day, and it is absolutely dangerous. It's not our road to maintain. You know that this is an issue. You guys have been out there looking at it. And you knew that it needs a French drain under there to drain the water effectively. If we're not going to plan for funding for it, what's going to happen when someone dies? It is truly the only way in and out of town.
yeah, Mayor, I think your concerns are very valid. I know sometimes there's talk back and forth about, funding and stuff like that. The bottom line is for funding for a capital project, I have to get approval from an organization like this to put those funds into it. So it's probably about $1 million project right now is our current estimates. If we were to really pull back in there. So that's the context on the funding side of things, is just that CDOT does not, I don't have the ability to just say we're going to use funding.
But I also have 5,000 people that need to get in and out of town. So how do they get in and out of town with a pothole so deep that the road is actually sinking? That you're very well aware of it, that the road is actually sinking there, and that cars are being damaged from that pothole, and that motorcycles can no longer go through, and it's the only way in and out of town. So how do we keep patching it every summer and then it's sinking again by September? Just saying, how do 5,900 residents get in and out of town? I would like to know that.
It sounds to me like this is a conversation that needs to happen offline. And I know you're super frustrated and I totally get it. But he doesn't have an instantaneous answer for us
I
today.
get it, but
So,
they also don't call us back. So I'm pushing back in public because I need my citizens protected. I need the road fixed.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I would like to say one thing on the Mamsip roundabout down by exit 128, the new one down there, the one I love. I used to leave and I would count 2 or 3 cars that I'd have to wait for to go by, which was fine because they never stopped at the stop sign that used to be there anyway. The huge roundabout you put at exit 128. Yesterday, when I left my house, I counted 25 cars I had to wait for before I could get off my street, which is perfectly fine with me because it means that that gate and that intersection is doing exactly what we were hoping it would do, would be pull some of the traffic off of gate 20 and you know, some of the other and Academy Boulevard. So hats off to you guys. I think it's doing exactly what we intended to. I don't mind waiting through those cars driving by. So thank you.
very good. Thank you.
And I'm not trying to say that you have permission. I want to know specifically what CDOT's position is because I will rally the troops and I will make sure that this is posted about high and wide because my citizens are in danger.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have another slide, John?
Yeah, if we do have advance to the next slide, just a real quick, again, cursory, just run through of other central Front Range projects. 115 project there on the west side of Fort Carson is wrapping up. US 9 and 285 as well. The chain up stations, that this should be the last time they're on this they are opened up. They're up in Park County. 24G resurfacing, so the east side of town here through Peyton, and 50 resurfacing down by Fremont County. Also, all those wrapping up. The new project for 2024 that we're expecting is the Canyon City Oil Creek Ditch culvert lining project. So a culvert down there, it's a irrigation, actually a double culvert right there across 50 on the west side of Canyon City. And other projects, and I'm sorry, there's a typo on that where it says projects within PPACG. That's not correct. That's within a Central Front Range, but that is a new project that will get under construction this winter. And then 2 projects for 2025 are resurfacing of Highway 24 west of Woodland Park there, Florissant through Divide, and US 285 resurfacing up in Bailey, pretty approaching Jefferson County. So.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. John, I appreciate all the great work that you've been doing, you know, in El Paso County. I do want to actually just do one more follow-up with regard to Highway 105. My apologies for bringing it up again, but could we get, since that is also part of my county commissioner district, and I'm the commissioner for 2 more months or a month and a half, could we get could you work with the CDOT staff and send something either to the PPACG board or to Glant and me or something like that about your characterization of that piece of road? Does it qualify for, could it possibly qualify for some emergency funding? Is there something that PPACG could do to support CDOT to do something on there? Is there any funding projected in the future or no funding projected? I'd like to kind of like figure out, based on what Glant has mentioned, and I don't personally know that piece of road that well, but it sounds like, you know, her perspective of this is it's dangerous. I'd be interested in CDOT's perspective on it and what CDOT might be able to do or what CDOT can't do, lack of funding, and if there's something we could help CDOT to deal with it. And maybe this could go down a path, and I'm hoping maybe that it could end up getting identified as some kind of an emergency thing. And then what does that mean? Like, can CDOT put funds into something that's an emergency? So what I'm asking is if we could get a follow-up from you, like a no kidding for real follow-up, and what would be the pathway for repair of that?
I'd be glad to. I mean, that is, you know, I think my staff, when they've communicated, the deal is though, we're having a hard time identifying where we could get funding for this.
Yeah.
So that's the issue. We have diverted, I mean, and the board here has approved We did, but it was $100,000. We've put about 50,000 of that into looking at doing design work, understanding that, for example, there's a concrete Highway 105 underneath the Highway 105 from decades ago. That proposes significant challenges in terms of how to rebuild that section of road itself as well. We've had about another $50,000 available to kind of try to help maintenance get out there. They have added some ditches and some things like that to try to improve it. But yes, no, that's exactly. I welcome that. That's exactly what. The engineers at CDOT don't control the funding, right?
Right.
We are looking for funding. We're looking for some culvert funding potentially to see if it could apply. We don't just have emergency funding.
Well, for the work that you've done, thank you for the response, but for the work that you've done and it sounds to me like maybe CDOT might have at least some sense of like, what it might cost for a temporary kind of fix and what it might cost for a permanent fix. Sounds like the permanent fix might be, pretty substantial. I think that would be great to agendize maybe for the next PPACG meeting. Maybe we could ask you, John, to come in and start giving us numbers and start working on how to actually resolve it. And then, because once we informed with that, if there is something that PPACG could do to help, I'm going to guess, because I can't really speak for anybody else on the board, but I think we would all be interested in trying to figure out how to address that. So if we could maybe have a real discussion about that particular thing here in the PPACG meetings, that'd be awesome.
Right. But in the meantime, I would like to see if potentially maybe you want to be included in the conversation since you are I didn't realize your area went up that
Yeah, it goes all the way up to Palmer Lake. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to be concluding the conversation between, the city and CDOT and them and see what can be done in the meantime. Because, a month is a really long time when you have a huge pothole.
Well, if there's a way to do something faster,
That's what
even
I'm
if
saying.
it's a temporary fix, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe you wanted to be included in that conversation.
I think I would.
I would like that too. I would like that as well, because the thing that I'm trying to reiterate without people really kind of understanding how Tri-Lakes is laid out, there's not any other way in and out of town. And most Sundays, there's so many bikers in town coming to O'Malley's and riding their motorcycles on a sunny day. It's literally so dangerous. It's something that every board member and town staff takes calls about every single day. And especially after a storm, when the creek's running high, or the August storms, the 100-year storms, and now after the most recent snowstorm. I mean, we have 3 and 4 foot drifts. It's so dangerous. And there's not any other way to get into town. It literally is our entire thoroughfare through town. It's not like there's a way to divert around it. There's no way to get into town without using that road.
Okay. All right. Maybe that meeting can happen sooner rather than later, Stan. Maybe.
That'd be great. I'd love to, if we could maybe have a really quick over the next day or two kind of conversation about it. That'd be awesome to help understand what could be done. And then I have to presume that the no kidding real fix is not a simple proposition and would take time. But I don't know, maybe there's something that could be done in the short time as a temporary measure.
So far, to say,
Okay. Well, and we have the springs and fountain, and there is no easy answer when they.
Yeah.
I get it. I get that, Sharon. But
no, I'm just saying, let's continue the conversation.
No, you have other roads to go around.
Let's continue the conversation offline and rather than get confrontational at the meeting. I think it would be better. So.
Yeah, Michael, it's a great suggestion, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kate.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else?
No.
And when you send the email to Stan and myself, if you could add Don Collins onto that as well, our town manager.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. State transportations, John or Commissioner Williams, are you still on? Oh, she is online. Okay. She told me earlier she wasn't gonna make it. Or... Okay,
I
thank
am
you.
here, so I didn't know if I would make it today. I do apologize. We met, and that was one of the things we discussed was the budget for next year's stack. Curious, out of all of the revenues we have about 5 revenue funds. The governor's budget is going to cut funding to transportation. There's these faster fees, which started in 2009 or 2010. They are not Tabor limited, so they're not in an enterprise. So everybody, when they register their car, next year is going to get somewhat of a cut, but it was a pretty significant cut in the statewide budget because the faster fees are going to be adjusted downward so that the state can meet its Tabor cap. The other thing we did was we spent some serious time discussing where the statewide transportation advisory committee could be effective. Because we are so purely an advisory role, it can be very frustrating. So we get a lot of updates, we get a chat, we get to learn how to do transportation. We do get to help with the regional priority plan, but we don't feel like we are truly advising or, we don't feel like we have a great relationship with the transportation committee, just to be honest. So we're trying to find a way that we can be more effective. And we brought that up as a fairly larger discussion. And that's all I have. I just saw Sharon leave, so hopefully Eric can take over from here. But that's it. It was a good meeting. I felt it went very well.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Anybody have any questions for Holly about STAC and what's going on up there? Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you. So, there was a comment that Commissioner Williams made that has me at least somewhat concerned, and that was that there's going to be a reduced budget for transportation in the state of Colorado, or potentially. We'll have to see how the legislature responds to the governor's budget, but I assume that's the governor's budget proposal. I know that they have Tabor cap issues and they've got other challenges and so forth. What I don't have any insight into is there a broader cut in other budgets as well, or is it the transportation budget that's being hit substantially more than others? Because we still do have huge problems with our roads, even just in maintaining what we got.
We have the 5 enterprise funds that they did, I think it was in 2020. And so those funds are starting to build up money. The faster funds was the one I particularly keyed on that was going to be cut because it is not an enterprise fund, so it's not Tabor exempt. But as Jody knows, the Area Agency on Aging is also going to be cut again. There are a lot of broader cuts going on in the budget. It's just that our Tabor revenue is coming in over the Tabor limitation, and so there will be more cuts in the budget. So it's just not transportation. I imagine it's happening throughout the whole budget. I haven't gotten that deep into the budget, but it's just not in transportation. And then the other goal that they have right now is the governor truly does want to go to the ballot in 2026 for the Front Range passenger rail. And so they're doing a lot of stuff in rail as opposed to reducing travel time and increasing capacity, which they took out of one of their major policy directives. And instead, they're trying to build more things that would be multimodal and encourage Front Range rail and prepare for a ballot initiative on Front Range passenger rail. So it's amazing when he went through the presentation, the number of different sources that the man has. So, but the whole budget has, it's hard to keep track of.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Williams. And I don't know how many of you have gone through some of the statewide budget projections. I know CCI at our legislative steering committee meetings late this fall, they're about close to $1 billion, $900 million of things that they need to fund that they won't be able to fund. And that's why you're seeing the big cuts coming in. And the explanation on that is they are largely running out of ARPA funds and other funds that came out of COVID and the significant federal funding that came out of COVID, and those are going away. And despite the warnings to not create new programs that weren't sustainable, they did so, and that's why it's getting chopped up. And so a lot of these programs that they have out there that they created, the initial funding's gone, and so they're going to slide funding from a bunch of different sources to try to keep them alive and to maintain them. So there's going to be some cuts in there. So thank you, Commissioner Williams. And with that, I'm going to keep going. Any other questions about STAC? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on, interestingly enough, to the Front Range Passenger Rail update. Lynette, what's going on there? I know you just came on that board.
Right. So Holly is correct. The board is looking at going to the ballot in 2026. But there's still a lot of work that has to be done there. So we're not going to put the cart before the horse. The only update I have is Andy Karzian, who was the general manager that spoke a few weeks ago here, has decided not to renew his contract. So we will be hiring a new general manager at the first of the year. And that's really the only update that we have with Front Range Passenger Rail.
Okay, any questions for Lynette about Front Range Rail? All right, seeing none, we're going to move to item K. Committee and commission vacancies. Andy?
Nothing major to report there. You've got the list of all the committees in the packet that identifies where we have vacancies by jurisdiction. Actually, I should mention, we had a really good conversation with our Water Quality Management Committee a couple of weeks ago with our new environmental planner, Angie Martell, and I, and a couple others. We met with kind of the leadership of that group, and really we're kind of beating the bushes to make sure we get the right people around the table there. We have a bunch of sanitation districts that are not represented, so we're cleaning up our roster there. But so that's maybe one to take particular attention to, is the Water Quality Management Committee, really trying to get that into better shape. The core group does great work, but we're missing a lot of folks around the table. And that's all I've got on committee issues. I can keep rolling for my update. I just have one item I was going to mention, kind of back to legislative related issues. We haven't pulled the trigger on this yet, but we're looking at potentially scheduling a legislative roundtable with our state delegation members on Friday, December the 6th in the afternoon, looking at maybe a 3:00 start. If we get enough head nods from around the table, we'd like to move forward and just nail it down and start sending out invites. We know that a couple of races are still not yet decided, and I guess more ballots are going to be counted or announced or whatever tomorrow, Thursday. So we do have a couple of outstanding seats yet that aren't quite determined, but we'd love to move forward working with our lobbying firm to nail down Friday, December the 6th at 3 in this room for our legislative roundtable. The budget's going to be a big issue. Our new lobbyist, Bowditch and Castle, Ed Bowditch, worked with the JBC for a number of years and gave a good update a couple of weeks ago with the legislative committee. But yeah, everybody's ox is potentially going to get gored in the state budget. We're anticipating it in the AAA. We fought tooth and nail with other AAAs around the state last year, this year, to get $2 million put back into the budget that was cut. That money's gone away in the governor's budget. So it's going to be a bloody mess next year. So the sooner we can start collaborating with our state delegation members, the better. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, just for awareness, December 5 and December 6 are the 2 days that the legislators, particularly the new legislators, will be expected to be in Denver to go over the legislative process, how to do fiscal notes, how to do technology overviews, and so forth and so on. So those 2 particular days might be difficult to end up with the entire delegation. Well, new members especially, but those are meetings that any legislator can participate in. So even if you're just having been reelected or whatever, they potentially might have an interest in going there anyway. But all the new ones will want to go to that, I would imagine, because they'll get through them. They'll teach the mechanics about how to introduce bills, how to add fiscal notes, and all that kind of stuff.
I know.
And that's 5
I
and
know
6
that.
December.
I know the 5th, Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC has a legislative roundtable. So
right,
we may just need to roll with who's available, put the word out. maybe ask Ed to just ask everybody sooner rather than later, hey, is this an issue?
Yeah.
Because we run short of dates with that darn holiday at the end of the month that messes everything up, you know?
Yeah,
And Stan, do you
Yeah.
know the time frame of those meetings up at the legislature for?
those are all-day meetings.
their-
And they are not online. They won't hold them online. They have to be in person, and they start at 8 a.m. and they go to 4.
Okay.
So, I mean,
I guess we'll work with our lobbyists and see what they think
Yeah.
about their, because obviously they'll be the ones that'll be able to confirm whether or not we'll be able to, get legislators in on that. Obviously, the experienced legislators will probably ignore a lot of that, but you're right, the new ones who frankly, we probably need to get an opportunity to start to build relationships with,
Yeah.
we're gonna need. So let's just work with our lobbyists to make sure we get as impactful of a timing as possible.
I would just offer the idea that possibly that early the following week, Monday the 9th, Tuesday the 10th, they just might be better choices, and you're only really delaying it a couple of days.
Yeah, we went for a Friday because then we don't have to worry about getting on top of anybody's council nights. And because a lot of us have moved council nights around because of the holidays, like nobody wanted to come on the 24th,
Yeah.
our meeting. It's canceled. Oh, okay. All righty. Well, yeah, so the 13th, Friday the 13th would be, I know, would be the next, and then you can't really go any closer because then people are starting to travel for the holidays the next Friday. So
Right. The 13th, we do have a mayor's caucus meeting scheduled. We
we
can see
can,
how
we can be flexible.
Yep.
We can be flexible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're a smaller group.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Back to the drawing board. We'll send out some options later today.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Stan.
You're welcome.
Gavel's back to you, ma'am.
Oh, man, I got a banana. I'm starting to.
Well, I
feel
thought
like
you
a
were done with
bear.
it. If you want me to
Not
continue, I
quite.
can, 'cause I'm really good at
Go
adjourning.
ahead. Well, we're to member entity announcements. Member.
Any
entity
member
annou-
announcements?
Christmassy stuff y'all got going
Yeah.
on. Yes, ma'am.
We have December 7th is a big day in Woodland Park for kicking off the Christmas season. We have, or holiday season, I should say. We have breakfast with Santa with the Kiwanians in the morning at the Cultural Center in Woodland Park. All day long, we have the holiday home tour that is a favorite of everyone's through the day. It also is on Sunday. And then in the evening, we culminate with our Lights Above the Clouds, formerly known as, wow, I've forgotten the old name. Anyway, Lights Above the Clouds Parade on 24 in downtown Woodland Park, which is another huge favorite and very entertaining. So that's our Christmas kickoff. But if you don't mind, I'd like to just acknowledge one of our staff members. Jody and his staff were very helpful with me and a dear friend of mine with suggestions and direction for someone having issues and needing help with an elderly person. And I just have to acknowledge you and with your help and your willingness to lead someone in the right direction. So kudos to you and your staff, and thank you so much for your help. That's all I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Yes, so I've got just 2 quick items. The first one is, as you all may be aware, that our El Paso County coroner is moving on, and El Paso County is in the process of getting applications for a new coroner, going through an interview process. It's my understanding that statutorily, we will need to swear that new coroner in by 31 December. And I think that's actually technically the time that we're planning on swearing him in is literally on the 31st. But it may be a few days earlier, but we will have a new coroner starting in 2025. And then in early December, just wanted everybody to be aware that the CCI Winter Conference is going to start around noon on the 2nd of December and go to around noon on the 4th of December. And that'll be on the northern side of Denver for that conference. But most of the commissioners will be participating in that. Thank you.
We never really realized how important, I don't think growing up, how a coroner is, but I think we've had some amazing, maybe that's not the correct word, but it is amazing things that have happened in our area in the last few years to really put that highlight on that. And so I never really thought about what the, chain of command is on that and how that person.
Well, the other interesting thing about the coroner for El Paso County is that they've actually been providing coroner services for about a third of Colorado. All of southeastern Colorado has been using the El Paso County coroner. So it is a really important position at a statewide level, actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it is. And a lot of small county teller included do utilize the forensic services that very specialized. And Dr. Kelly has been, a leader nationally in that area. So I know that he's going to be missed from both for those that are friends as well as those that have professional relationships. He's going to be missed. Also, just want to just kind of throw a public statement out there that a lot of appreciation when you look at Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments, but then also just all the area governments, including local districts, with the recent Highland Lakes fire up in Teller County. It was able to be controlled quickly because of mutual aid agreements and the combined efforts of fire departments and first responders throughout the region. And it wasn't the first time, unfortunately, during the month of November where we had to call on a lot of mutual aid and a lot of partners to come in and help with emergencies in Teller County. And just want to extend a big thank you and congratulations to all of the different agencies that responded to that fire. We evacuated over 2,000 people in about 4 hours ahead of that fire. But then that evening, because we were able to get the residents out and off the roads, that all of these crews from all over, from UPass, Colorado Springs, from Park County, southwestern Douglas County, all of the different volunteer agencies came in. They built a line around that fire that held up to the 55-mile-per-hour winds that happened in less than 24 hours. And it was one of the more, we got a little lucky because we got a little rain that first night that was not projected, but it was just a tremendous effort. And just again, thanks to all of these special districts, all of the first responders out there, because we're not always going to get huge successes, so we need to celebrate them when we get them. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yes.
December 7th and 8th up in Green Mountain Falls, we are having Yule Days. And if you ever want to see a board member dressed up as Santa, come on up.
I'm sorry. And Annie has her hand up. Thank you. I hadn't noticed that. Annie?
Yes, thank you. Just a couple updates on Christmas events in Southeast Teller County. December 13th, which is that Friday, City of Victor is having their parade and Christmas tree lighting ceremony, as well as an event at the Elks Lodge. And then the following day, December 14th, on Saturday, is Cripple Creek's Christmas Day extravaganza, a lot of events that are happening to include a Colorado Springs Chorale performance. It's a free concert. They've been coming up for several years for that. All of that information can be found on visitcripplecreek.com under the calendar events. And additionally, Ice Castles is tentatively opening December 19th, and that will run as long as the weather supports it. I say tentatively just because it depends on weather, obviously, and how quickly they can build up that ice castle, but a lot of Christmas stuff going on up here. So, and I also just want to reiterate Commissioner Stone's words, deep appreciation in Teller County for the swift and highly effective response with the Highland Lake fire. I'm always so impressed living up here, how the agencies come together to mitigate those issues, because it's a very real concern for us up here. So thank you to everybody who responded and made it so effective in addressing it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room? All right, well, we have a tree lighting November 22nd. They started years ago doing it the Friday before Thanksgiving. Anyways, we have that. And so then City Hall will be decorated. And we have the guy who carved the pumpkins, Willie Tutts, is going to come back and do an ice carving in Fountain. And so we'll have that that night. And then if you know some kids that live in the city of Fountain, families, we have a nonprofit that puts on what they call Miracle on Main Street, where they provide low-cost gifts that the kids can come and buy gifts for their parents and family members. So that will be going on the 7th, which sounds to be a very popular day around town. And Sherry, you had something.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just really quick, wanted to let you guys know we are continuing our partnership with the Pikes Peak area or Pikes Peak Art Council. And so this month's art is provided by Lori Bathidius. And so she does teach local classes here in Colorado Springs. If you're interested, it's all on her website. Her information is over on the paper to the left of the clock. So just wanted to give them a shout out and her a shout out as well. So
that seems to be very responsive on the part of the art community to bringing us artwork, and I really appreciate that. Really, really bright. That one down there especially really brightens up the room. Oh, I hadn't even noticed the one right there by the podium. Okay, yeah, yeah. All right, thank you. All right, anything else?
The only other thing I've got, and we can talk offline, Commissioner Stone, about opioid council meeting dates and possibility of meeting here if that's still a need.
It is still in.
We have some possibilities we can chat about.
Thank you.
Let's talk. Yes.
All right. We're adjourned.
Yeah.